Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us this evening for the online engagement session for the Summer Village of Larkspur and Westlock County Intermunicipal Development Plan. The purpose of the meeting tonight is for, MPS as a project consultant, and me specifically, my name is Jane Dauphiny, to provide you with a little bit of information about what an intermunicipal development plan is and the purpose of the project, and then give you an overview of what the process has been to date in relation to the project and what steps we've taken working with our council committee members and administration to prepare a draft document. And then I'd like to go over with you the draft IDP and provide you with some information about the content of the document in order to hopefully encourage you to take a deeper dive into the document and help you as you do your review. The last part of the presentation will be, I guess, our big push or plug for you to review the IDP and then provide us with your feedback so that we can share that information with the councils of both municipalities and administration to enable them to help customize and tweak the document to make sure that it conforms to your needs. So I think I mentioned earlier, my name is Jane and I work with Municipal Planning Services, and we've been working with both of your municipalities for a long time as your planning services provider. So some of you may have interacted with our office at MPS over the years. If you were involved in a subdivision, our office processes subdivisions. We also help with projects like this for area structure plan reviews, land use bylaw, or MDP reviews. So if we sound familiar, it's probably because you've talked to us in that capacity over the years, once or twice. This particular project, the Intermunicipal Development Plan project, is a new statutory planning document for these two municipalities. An intermunicipal development plan is a statutory plan, and it's prepared in collaboration by two or more municipalities that share a common border. There are some things that an intermunicipal development plan must address, and these items are identified, or requirements are identified, in the Municipal Government Act, so the piece of provincial legislation that provides municipalities with the authority to undertake, and I guess responsibility to undertake, different types of planning projects. The Municipal Government Act indicates that when the municipalities engage in an intermunicipal development planning project, the IDP must address future land uses within the plan area, proposals for future development, coordination and planning for transportation systems, municipal and to some extent regional level, so intermunicipal, coordination of intermunicipal programs, if any exist, and then environmental matters, dispute resolution procedures, and then information about how the IDP will be administered by the partnering municipalities. The Municipal Government Act also opens up the door, really, and allows municipalities to address within this project or this type of a project any other matter that councils consider necessary. So often, historically, I guess, intermunicipal development plans have been used as tools to help municipalities, urban and rural municipalities, plan for how they may grow or expand. That isn't a requirement. There's nothing in the legislation that indicates that that is the purpose of this type of a planning exercise. It is one of the reasons or motivations behind historically engaging in intermunicipal development plans, but it's not the only one. Intermunicipal development plans are appropriate tools for engaging in intermunicipal discussions and intermunicipal planning to address matters of mutual importance or significance on lands or areas of mutual significance between two municipalities. So in this case, the intermunicipal development plan hasn't been proposed to facilitate growth, say, of the Summer Village. The Summer Village has been very clear in their planning documents about their intent or lack of intent to grow much bigger in terms of their development footprint. But it is a tool that the municipalities see as an opportunity to help further or coordinate development and redevelopment within the plan area to ensure that development is occurring in a manner that protects an area of mutual interest, in this case, the lake. So for an intermunicipal development plan to come into effect, it must be approved by the council of both of the participating municipalities. So it doesn't come into effect until both municipalities have given the bylaw 3 readings. Just like any other statutory planning document, an intermunicipal development plan can be amended and they are from time to time as conditions change or the community's priorities change. IDPs do not trigger annexation, they do not change municipal taxes, and they do not take away the autonomy of one of the participating municipalities to issue decisions on subdivision or development applications that affect lands within their municipalities. So it doesn't change who the approving authorities are for either municipality, but it does identify an agreed to future land use plan within the area that's identified as the plan area. Every IDP is a little bit different, and that's because the needs of the participating partners within the intermunicipal development plan are always a little bit different. Additionally, all IDPs should be customized in order to reflect the existing planning documents of the partnering municipalities and also the land characteristics of the land base that they will apply to. The IDP's area and plan policies should be based on and reflect and support the existing development pattern within the plan area, the environmental constraints that affect, I guess, what types of development would be appropriate or suitable on different lands and what types of development could be considered hazardous on different types of lands. And it should also reflect the feedback from councils and administrations of all of the partner municipalities. So here's a little bit of information about the process that we followed to date in order to prepare the draft document that's been circulated on your municipality's website. The project began in July of 2019, and there was an information meeting between the two administrations and a planner from our office, Kyle Miller. In winter of 2020, a project newsletter and survey was circulated to community members. I believe that original circulation was sent to everyone in the Summer Village, as well as everyone within the county within the area that's identified as the watershed of the lake. And I'll show you what that area is as we move through the presentation. In the background, our office was undertaking some preliminary research and data gathering and beginning some mapping exercises. In spring of 2020, we sent out a survey and we compiled the survey responses and provided a report to the administrations and to our committee. In June of 2020, our project steering committee met for the first time. Our steering committee for this project consisted of a member of council from each of the municipalities, as well as representatives from administration. In order for us to have quorum for our meetings, we always had to have a member of council present from both of the municipalities. I'll note that as we went through this process, which has taken a little bit of time, the representative from the county did change. Originally, the councillor was Councillor Slobodin, and now our representative is Councillor Scubin. So I noticed that in the draft that was circulated on the websites, we had our first council member, I believe, identified in the committee. We'll update that prior to finalizing the IDP to reflect the change in our committee's membership. But there was always representation from both municipalities in terms of the council and also administration to make sure that both municipalities always had a voice at all of the meetings. After our startup meeting with the committee, MPS prepared a draft of the intermunicipal development plan. That draft was then circulated to our committee members and administrators, and we met again to review the draft documents. We took the feedback provided by our committee members and we made adjustments and changes to the documents. IDPs are not always the easiest documents to prepare, and sometimes as we go through these processes, we end up identifying or having to make changes in order to ensure that the needs and interests of both municipalities are being satisfied. And that was the case in this particular process. We started with a plan area that was essentially half a mile around the lake in order to try and ensure that we were providing a consistent approach to land use and land management in those areas that are of the most, I guess, environmental significance in relation to the lake. And the county indicated that they had some concerns with the area of the plan that was identified and felt that the area was too big and might result in there being, I guess, a plan that was a little bit overreaching. And so there were some additional conversations and discussions that occurred, ultimately resulting in the plan area being adjusted to be the plan area that's identified in the draft that has been circulated to the communities. And that plan area I'll identify as we move through the slides. It's essentially a half-mile boundary around the boundary of the Summer Village. So there was a bit of time that went by in between some of our meetings as we moved through this process as the councils and administrations worked through some of their questions and concerns in order to ensure that the documents best reflected both municipalities' needs. So throughout the fall and winter of 2020, we had those discussions and negotiations and made those changes to the documents. Feedback was incorporated into the documents, and then in January of 2021, we met again with committee members and made some final adjustments to the document, and that's the document that was circulated to all of you. And it'll be the document that I present information on this evening. So now I'd like to take you through, I guess, an overview of what's in the draft IDP. So this most certainly does not provide you a super comprehensive view of what's in the IDP. It's intended to provide you with some information about the purpose of the document, how the document is structured, and some of the highlights. And I'd like to encourage you again to have a closer look at the document and make sure that you're comfortable with the policy direction that's in the document, so that we have that feedback to provide both of the councils and administrations as we move into the next step of the process, which will be the council's consideration of the bylaw to adopt the IDP. There is most certainly time to make changes to the document based on your input. We will not meet again with the committee until you have had the opportunity to provide us with your feedback, so that we can ensure your voices are reflected in the information that we provide the committee and also to councils and administration. So the way that the document has been proposed and has been structured thus far, we have an acknowledgement section, an introduction section, the section that provides some information about the plan, and then our policy sections. The later parts of the document provide information specifically about how the plan is to be administered, relating to how communication will occur between the different administrations and what type of a process will be undertaken in the event that there is a dispute. So in the acknowledgement section, we've included a territorial acknowledgement, as well as, I guess, we were hoping that we'd have as good attendance as we do at this meeting this evening. I kind of have my fingers crossed. It's always hard to know whether or not we will have good attendance. I've actually found that over the last year, where we've had more of these meetings electronically or virtually, our attendance has been a little bit better. It has been a bit unfortunate that we haven't been able to meet you in person, but it is, I think, pretty convenient to be able to join us from wherever you are in the world, especially taking into consideration the nature, I guess, of some of the community up here, being that it is a seasonal community, and we expect or understand that some of you will reside in a different location for a large portion of the year. So this section acknowledges the contributions that I'm hoping you will provide us with over the next couple of weeks, as well as the contributions from our committee, council members and administration, and the project team. This will be updated as we finalize the project. The introduction section provides more detailed information about the purpose of an intermunicipal development plan. It also identifies the principles that guided us in our deliberations. The principles that guide this plan are to maintain open, fair, and honest communication, to ensure that future development is mutually beneficial and compatible, to respect and maintain the local heritage and character of the region, to ensure efficient use of land, infrastructure, services, and facilities, so we don't result with unanticipated or unexpected costs for either municipality as a result of an approval that was issued by one or the other municipalities, to identify and protect environmentally sensitive or significant features, and then to provide a system for effective intermunicipal development plan administration and implementation. So those processes are clear, and I guess will stand the test of time, because we do know that from time to time administrators or council members change. If we can have these things recorded and compiled in one place, it makes it a little bit easier to ensure that the processes are consistently being adhered to, and then we can also ensure that, if there is turnover in either of the organizations, all of that information is there and it's transparent for everybody who attends. This section provides some information about the legislative requirements for this type of a plan, and then it identifies what the relationship between an intermunicipal development plan and an IDP is with the other types of planning documents that the municipalities may have. Both of your municipalities, the county and the summer village, have a municipal development plan. This intermunicipal development plan must be consistent with the policy direction in your municipal development plans. It's certainly something that we took into consideration and weighted very heavily when we were looking at what to put into this particular document. Oh, Summer Village of Larkspur, I said you have a municipal development plan. Kim, has that been approved yet? You let me know in the chat if I'm ahead of myself. I'll double check that so I'm not giving you bad information. The county certainly does have a municipal development plan. And I know that the Summer Village was working on theirs. So the next section of the IDP provides a snapshot, I guess, of the plan area. So it provides a bit of information about the local history and geography. Okay, thanks, Kim. Kim just noted that the NDP has been approved. Awesome. And then it provides some information about the plan area itself. So on the slide, you can see a red square, essentially, that identifies the plan area. So all of the lands within the red boundary are identified as within the plan area from the perspective of the future land use concept. You'll notice that the Summer Village of Larkspur is identified in white. It's kind of like the donut hole in the center of the plan area. And that's because the future land use policies component of the plan doesn't apply within Larkspur. Larkspur is essentially built out. So we weren't too concerned about identifying or coordinating future land use within that area because we know what it's going to be. It's going to be more of the same. And essentially, if development occurs within the Summer Village of Larkspur, it will be redevelopment of existing lots. The Summer Village doesn't allow for any subdivision. The rest of the policies that are identified within the document, specifically pertaining to how redevelopment is to occur, and then policies relating to, say, infrastructure, referral processes, and those sorts of things apply to both municipalities to ensure fairness. The plan in this section provides some information about the specific and unique environmental features. When we did the data collection for the IDP, we did it at the watershed scale. I always do that. I always look at data collection in terms of where we have a water body, the watershed. And that's because all development that occurs within a watershed essentially filters towards the lake, right? It has an impact or the ability to impact the lake. And then it allows us to see that bigger picture of what's going on within the larger area, since our municipal boundaries are to some extent invisible lines, right? So it just allows us to have a larger data pool to pull from when we're looking at future land uses. The other thing that we identify and have mapped in the IDP are development constraints. So those are features or information that we are able to compile when we do our land suitability mapping that would indicate that there is some type of a constraint to different types of future developments. As we've gone through these planning exercises throughout the province over the last couple of years, we have more, in many situations, probably over 50% of them, found some kind of a surprise historic land use that we were unaware of when we began our project. The biggest unfortunate surprise land use that we have often discovered is a surprise old landfill. In this situation, we did not unearth one of those, so I was very grateful we didn't have to contend with a surprise old landfill. But those are the sorts of things that we try to gather data on in order to be able to map them so that the municipalities have that as a tool that's available for them moving forward. With a municipality like Westlock County, that has a GIS mapping system, lots of the information that we looked at that the county has incorporated into their mapping system already, which is excellent. Smaller municipalities like summer villages rarely do have access to GIS mapping. So there's a huge benefit for the summer village to do this type of work in that it enables the summer village to have a more complete picture of some of those land use considerations that would impact development or redevelopment within or adjacent to their municipal boundary. So there's a lot of value in doing this just from the perspective of being able to compile and consolidate that environmental and land suitability data, and then be able to provide the municipalities with that information when they're looking at new applications for, in the county's case, subdivision, or the Summer Village's case, redevelopment of lots. So here's some of the maps that we have used to compile the data that we gathered in looking at the land suitability assessment for the plan area. The first one provides some information, and it's pretty broad scale information. County councilors will have heard me talk about this before. It's the Canada Lands Inventory mapping data. And so at a very, very broad brush stroke scale, it provides some information about ag capability within the area. Within the area, from the Canada Lands Inventory mapping, it appears that most of the soils within our plan area here are either Class 5 or Class 4 soils. So they're not the greatest from the perspective of cultivation. However, they are lands that provide a pretty important and significant ecological function. If you look at the second map, especially the lands that are directly north of our plan area, there appears to be a large number of wetlands identified in the provincial data. So those wetlands are very important, significant areas. And those areas are also, if you look to the third map, identified within the lands that are still crown lands. So that may explain some of the reason why those are public lands rather than private lands too. They're not the greatest agricultural lands, and they also are important environmental lands. So maybe this will be not a surprise to some of you. To some of you, this might be interesting and valuable information that gives you a little bit of a snapshot of what's going on, I guess, underneath the ground in some instances within your municipalities or adjacent to your municipalities. So the other things that we're able to map on these maps, I'm just going to turn to my other screen because it provides me with a slightly bigger picture. Oh, look at that. That's probably been up for a little while. Sorry about that, guys. Is the area of the Long Island Lake watershed, the location of the Spruce Island natural area, where environmentally significant areas have been mapped and identified by the province and the provincial data layer, and then the key wildlife and biodiversity zones. So a lot of these environmental features and considerations are happening just outside of the plan area, but within the watershed still. And then the map that's to the far right on the screen is the one that identifies the location of the crown lands and the Spruce Island Lake natural area, which is the kind of fluorescent greeny color. On that map, we've also identified the location of active and abandoned wells, and then the setbacks from those wells, oil and gas wells, just for clarification, rather than water wells. And then the location of pipelines. So sometimes when we do this exercise too, it's very surprising how many wells and pipelines there are within the plan area. In this case, there are very few. However, there are a few well sites identified within the plan area. This information is important for us when we're thinking about what types of development can or should occur because of the required provincial setbacks from these types of features. So now I'll go into the policies or the general policies that would apply to all of the lands within the county and also within the Summer Village. There's policies in this section that pertain to existing and planned development as is required in the MGA. These policies recognize that both municipalities, their municipal development plans, now that they're both approved, where they have policy direction relating to matters that are not specifically addressed in the IDP, it's the policies in the MDP that will take precedence. Additionally, we have a policy that indicates that it's been agreed to by both municipalities that future development within the plan area should maintain the character of the respective communities and be consistent with the character of the communities. And also a policy that restricts development in the Summer Village to existing lots. So that's really just carrying forward what the Summer Village has in their existing land use bylaw, which is the policy or I guess regulation that prohibits future additional subdivision. So it's a commitment to that regulation in the land use bylaw. The next section provides some requirements for local plans, and this particular policy is influenced by a policy that exists already in the county's municipal development plan. And we looked to that as we were preparing this policy to ensure that it would be consistent moving forward. And we weren't creating a scenario or a difficulty administratively for the county in this plan that was committing them to something that they hadn't already committed to in their old planning documents, their existing planning documents. This is less of a consideration for the Summer Village because the Summer Village doesn't intend to increase their built footprint. So the requirement here is for an area structure plan or conceptual scheme to support proposals for multi-parcel subdivisions or substantial development permit applications that would require an amendment to the county's land use bylaw. So any development or subdivision that's currently provided for in the agricultural district in the county's land use bylaw is supported by this plan. There's no requirement in this IDP to amend the intermunicipal development plan. And there certainly is policy direction within this document that indicates support from both municipalities for those types of developments that are identified as permitted and discretionary uses within the underlying districts in the county's land use bylaw. We talked a fair bit during our committee meetings about how important it was to ensure that through this planning exercise, we were not setting up policies that would take away from or restrict the rights of residents within the county to undertake the types of development or subdivision that they are allowed to essentially by right in the existing zoning in the underlying county land use bylaw districts. So that was weighted quite heavily as we went through our process, and we ensured that the policy direction within this plan protected those rights of existing property owners, and I guess future property owners, to continue to use and enjoy their property in the manner in which they're accustomed. This section also provides some policy direction relating to public uses, utilities, and emergency services. And it essentially indicates that those types of uses would be supported within the plan without an amendment to the IDP. And then it provides some direction relating to historic resources. It looks like we have a typo on our slide. We have historic resources there twice. There is a change relating to how subdivision development permit applications are processed when it comes to historic resources. You maybe don't remember back to, but the slide where we had identified some of that data, one of the things that we identify in those maps where there is data evidence in the provincial data is where the province has identified historic resources or sites with high potential to contain historic resources. You'll notice in your mapping, none of those sites were identified. We have included policies in the document that pertain to historic resources because this is a requirement of the provinces anyway. And even though today there are no sites within the plan area that have been identified and cataloged by the province in their OPEC system, which is the system that they use to identify and map areas where there may be or there are known historic resources, that mapping gets updated a couple times a year. And so we need to ensure that there is some direction within this document that would provide us with guidance in the event that at some point in the future, a historic resource is identified within the plan area. So it wasn't a cut and paste area. We did include it deliberately because in the event that the data changes, we wanted to make sure that you were prepared. And then this information was in the document and very transparent to members of both communities. The typo on this slide, I think the second historic resources there is supposed to be infrastructure. Brad, am I correctly interpreting that? Is it roads specifically? It looks like it to me. Looks like
yeah. Roads. Sorry, Jane. It was supposed to be roads and servicing. It's kind of a catch-all of 3 or 4 subheadings under the general policy framework section.
Roads and servicing. Okay, thank you. The policies certainly do seem to pertain to roads. So the policies under the what should be roads section are intended to ensure roads within the plan area are compatible with the long-term plans of both municipalities. One of the things we talked about are existing intersections that provide access to the communities or roads where both municipalities have a mutual interest because they're necessary or required for both municipalities' residents to provide access to different locations within the plan area. one of perhaps the benefits of doing this type of work is that it enabled us to have a conversation about some of those roads and intersections. And because of the referral requirements within the IDP, it also helps to ensure that before an approval is issued in a location that could have an impact on one or the other municipality's road system, there's a requirement for referral so we can get on top of and address any potential conflicts or impacts on the road network and ensure that if a development is proposed that would impact the road infrastructure, we're getting a traffic impact assessment as part of the application requirements so we can figure out what that impact will be. And then the municipalities are able to ensure that the developer is responsible for any costs associated with improvements. So it doesn't, at the end of the day, result in the community members inadvertently having to pay for infrastructure improvements that are required in order to facilitate development on a private piece of land. So it's some of these types of pieces of an intermunicipal development plan are the pieces that I think are most benefit for municipalities. We often focus on them as, expansion plans or things like that, but that's not it. The real benefit is in the communication and the administrative components of them so that we can get in front of potential issues or conflicts that development on one side or the other side of a municipal boundary could inadvertently trigger or cause because we weren't doing the referral at the right time during the development process. Where we have done that in the past, the only avenue that's available for the municipalities to try and address some of these conflicts is through the appeal process. And that's not the best time. If we can deal with these things before decisions are issued, it sure makes it a lot easier for everybody and makes the development process a lot smoother. So it can reduce some of the red tape associated with extended timelines that can occur as a result of an appeal process or our communication not happening early enough along in the process. So we're trying to do better. We're really trying to do better with some of these administrative pieces and come up with a system that's clear for everybody and works for the administrations of all of the municipalities. The next bits here relate to when an agreement might be required for servicing and what the requirements will be for water and wastewater services. In this instance, because there are no municipal or regional water or wastewater services provided within the plan area, the policy just indicates that moving forward, there isn't a commitment to develop those services, which are expensive. They might be great, but that'll take some additional conversations. The commitment is to ensure that landowners who do development within the plan area in either municipality must ensure that the systems that they have in place comply with provincial and municipal requirements. And the last bit here deals with stormwater management. And that's, I think, one of the other areas where I don't want to slag planners, my office included. However, I don't think that we have historically done enough to ensure that as we move through our planning exercises and our approval processes, we are carefully considering off-site impacts associated with increasing the amount of non-permeable surface on a lot, which is what happens when we do development on a lot. In almost every instance, agricultural land use is excluded, I think. So there are some specific policies within this section that are designed specifically for development that occurs adjacent to a lake. So within a lake environment. And we do this in order to ensure that development that occurs within these locations, because the intent of these types of plans isn't to prohibit development, is to ensure that when development happens, it happens in a manner that minimizes potential negative impacts on the water resources within the municipalities and also within the lake. So we've included some policies to encourage low impact development systems and design features to try and incorporate relatively low cost site-by-site design mitigations or tools that can be implemented at time of development or redevelopment to help control surface water runoff. And we do that for two reasons, right? The first one is the one that I mentioned. We know that there's a direct correlation between the amount of sediment and phosphorus that runs off of the land into the lake and the prevalence of, and I guess frequency of algae blooms in our lakes in Alberta. So if every effort we can take or make to minimize the amount of surface water that's running directly off of our lake adjacent lands into our water bodies helps protect our lakes. And as a consequence of that, I think it also helps to protect our property values. The nicer our lakes are, the nicer it is to be at the lake. The other reason that we try to incorporate more of these features into our planning documents these days is that in our older subdivided areas, and many of our summer villages in particular fit that characteristic, we did not at time of original subdivision require stormwater management plans to be included as part of the subdivision process, which is really when they should be provided so that we can, I guess, spread the cost of that type of engineering exercise across a broader number of lots. That wasn't the practice years ago in many municipalities. And so we don't necessarily have a plan that indicates for each individual lot owner what the lot grading should be post-construction or how a lot is supposed to drain. In those cases where we don't have that information available, what we found as redevelopment occurs is that often the new development, when it goes in on a lot, is bigger than the development that was there before. And often, in order to facilitate the types of new construction that we see, especially at the lake, the lots are raised in elevation. And this, unfortunately, also causes water to run off of the lots onto adjacent properties. And if on those other properties, older properties that have not been redeveloped, there isn't some kind of a system that's been integrated into the lots to ensure that the water doesn't run off to the sides onto those lots, it can cause flooding on the adjacent properties, as well as things like, shadowing and those other considerations that are a little bit problematic. So if we can start thinking about how the water is supposed to move from our lot and off of our lot when we're redeveloping on a lot by lot scale, then we can get in front of and prevent some of those problems from occurring, and it makes it a lot easier and less disruptive as redevelopment occurs, and then also reduces our impact on the lake itself. So it's win-win-win to incorporate these sorts of design mitigations into our planning documents in order to try and minimize some of these problems that have been occurring throughout the province in our lake communities. Is there any that I didn't talk about in my long spiel there? There are some requirements for referrals. So if a new development or subdivision were to occur on land, say adjacent to the summer village of Larkspur, there's a requirement for referral of the stormwater management plan. That's one of the other things that we, I think, have learned from the lessons of the past, is that if a development occurs on one side of that invisible line, which is the municipal boundary, and we did not consult with the municipality that's on the other side of that invisible line, we have in the past inadvertently created scenarios where runoff from, say, a county or municipal district is running through the other municipality, be it the summer village or other urban municipality, and inadvertently causing flooding. So if we build in these requirements for referral and engagement prior to the issuance of the decisions, we can adjust and correct those design features to minimize and mitigate and disappear in many instances the unintended negative consequence there, and make sure that it will work for everybody. It's a lot easier and less expensive to do it that way than to try and go back retroactively and fix it. We have a couple of clients that are dealing with that situation now. Okay, the last two here relating to environmental policy speak specifically to design considerations relating to water quality and environmentally significant areas. So in relation to water quality, the plan includes some policy direction, again, to incorporate low impact development, landscaping provisions in the municipality's MDPs and land use bylaws where appropriate, to manage post-development activities on lots to prevent negative impacts on water quality and groundwater quality, to establish regulations for erosion and sediment control, municipal land use bylaws, and to encourage grazing away from water courses that could lead directly into Long Island Lake. Because those are some of the, I guess, the known sources for increased sediment and phosphorus that can negatively impact lake water quality. In relation to environmentally significant areas, there's some policy direction that enables the approving authorities to ask for additional information. When it's appropriate to do so, it's not a trigger to just ask for more information. These types of policies where we have tried to identify additional information asks from a development authority or a subdivision authority are there to ensure transparency. So to let a development proponent know that there are times when it may be necessary to submit additional information, but they're also intended to be tempered, I guess, with the requirement to ensure that the additional information asked is a reasonable ask and that it's necessary in order to ensure that the development isn't going to create a negative consequence. That the municipality ultimately at the end of the day may be responsible for mitigating or rectifying. All right, the next bit pertains to policies that are intended to relate specifically to the different areas that are identified on the future land use map. So that's it's a really boring map for this area because this is a pretty undeveloped area for the most part. Our existing land uses are a residential area, a country residential area within the county, an agricultural rural development area, that's the ag zone lands in the county, and then a crown land conservation area. And that is an area that applies to that small portion of land that is crown land in the northwest corner of the plan area. So the goal statement for the agricultural and rural development area that's identified in the plan and the intention of that area is to apply to lands where low intensity agricultural uses and rural residential development will occur in the future. So the anticipated future land use is essentially more of the same. For the country residential development area, that's intended to apply to lands where multi-lot country residential developments are currently developed or would be developed in the future. You'll notice when you look at the future land use concept that the only lands that future land use area has been applied to today is the area that is already developed as a multi-lot country residential subdivision. So if at some point in the future, one of the landowners who owns land within the gray area, so that the area that's identified as agricultural rural development, wanted to amend the county's land use bylaw to enable a multi-lot country residential development to occur, so something like what's happened in that yellow area today, then it would require an amendment to the county's land use bylaw. It would also require an amendment to the intermunicipal development plan. So I want to flag that because really that's, I guess, the part of the plan that is binding on both municipalities. It's in relation to this particular component of the plan itself. For an intermunicipal development plan to be amended, both of the councils from the participating municipalities must agree to the amendment. And if they don't agree to that amendment, then it triggers the dispute resolution process that's identified within the plan. So there's a way forward. There's always a way forward within these types of documents, but I wanted to make sure that bit is clear. An IDP is a type of intermunicipal agreement. And if there are changes proposed to the intermunicipal agreement, then both parties to the agreement must agree to those changes. And if not, you've got to work through the process to get to a place where both partners in the agreement are happy. So the last area that's identified, I indicated, was the Crown Land and Conservation Area. This is the area that is Crown Land, and it's anticipated that the future development, redevelopment in that area would be guided by the province of Alberta. Okay, so here is some of the policies within the three different areas. In the agricultural and rural development area, which are the gray shaded areas on the map, there's policies that encourage the conservation of existing agricultural lands. You know, we're working with the county for a long time, and that's always been something that's been identified as really important to members of the community in the county. And so we tried to echo that sentiment in this particular plan. We've discouraged the premature development of agricultural lands within the county to other uses to ensure that there isn't conflict between agricultural uses and other uses. And then we have some requirements to provide buffering if land is converted to a different use to reduce the potential for conflicts on adjacent lands. The last bit there is that in this area today, multi-lot subdivisions, so that's subdivisions that would result in a higher density than is currently allowed in the county's agricultural district. So if they were proposed within the gray area, they couldn't be approved without amending the IDP. And that's what I was mentioning on the previous slide. They would also, as a reminder, require an amendment to the county's land use bylaw. So that council process would already be triggered. The last provision here that's worth noting is that there's a requirement here for when an application is received to amend the IDP to redesignate lands to a future land use area, that's when an additional planning information may be required, like an area structure plan or an outline or development concept plan. And that's really just to ensure that when someone makes that type of a request of council, either council is provided with sufficient information in order to be able to assess the merits of the application and determine whether or not what's being asked for is appropriate in the location that it's being proposed. If council isn't provided with some sort of data or information in order to base their decision, it makes it very difficult for council to know which direction to go. In the yellowy orange area, which is the country residential area, there are some policies that encourage development to be in accordance with the county's existing municipal development plan and land use bylaw, so it's enabling that development to continue. There's also some considerations for the subdivision authority in the event that a new subdivision application is received in this area. And then there's some requirements for the county's land use bylaw to address siting and provide some information about maximum density for RV units that would be allowed within the county's residential district. So that's something that when we were talking with the committee and with administration about, Lori and Kathleen at the time identified as something that was perhaps a shortcoming in the county's existing land use bylaw. And so the policy that's in the IDP right now is kind of a nudge to say, hey, maybe this is something that we want to take another look at, whether or not we have sufficient information in order to guide us in the event that we're trying to determine how many are the density of RVs that should be allowed on any individual parcel. And the county is sort of in the process of beginning a land use bylaw review, a focused land use bylaw review. And so we figured this was an appropriate time to maybe have some of those discussions about that particular item because it could feed into that other conversation. There's no commitment in this policy to do a thing other than to revisit this to determine what would be appropriate for the county. So we're not taking away the autonomy of the county to determine what those numbers or density should be. It's just a nudge to help us get there so that we have a little bit of additional guidance. Okay, the last area here is that green area, and this, it says country residential development area on the top there, but it's not. It's the Crown Land and Conservation Area. Brad, I'm docking you 2 quarters for your 2 typos. I didn't announce this at the beginning, but Brad is also my husband. He's coming at you from our dining room this evening, and I'm from the office. I'm not sure which one of us got the cushier space. So I'll take this up with him later on. So in our Crown Land and Conservation Area, we have a couple of policies that encourage recreational uses within the Crown Land and Conservation Area, so consistent with the types of things that occur today. And then some requirements to cooperate with the provincial government to ensure that there's some connections between provincial and municipally managed trails wherever possible. And that's, I guess, another one of those nudge types of policies is that we saw this as a potential win-win, right, to expand some of the recreation opportunities within not just the plan area, but perhaps the larger watershed for the benefit of both the Summer Village and the county in areas that are appropriate. And the last one there is to ensure cooperation with the province to ensure that future land uses will not create a conflict with existing agricultural developments, residents and recreational developments, and environmental conservation efforts that are undergoing within the plan area. So it's just to encourage additional consultation and engagement, as it is really the theme of this IDP. So now we get into this in more detail. The last parts of the IDP speak most specifically to administration of the plan and building those consultation and communication relationships, and then how to address conflict in the event that one ever occurred. And we're not anticipating there to be any future conflicts, but sometimes makes it a little bit easier if we just have all of these steps identified, everyone has agreed to them, and then if we have a problem moving forward, it's very clear what we need to do in order to resolve it. So in the plan administration section, it provides some information about how the IDP is to be adopted, and a bit of that information that I gave you earlier about how it doesn't come into effect until both municipalities have given third reading to the bylaw. Some information about the approving authorities, the enactment of the bylaw, and then how the IDP would be amended in the event that an amendment is proposed, which could happen from time to time. This section also provides some information about the roles and responsibility of the Intermunicipal Planning Committee, so that our committee of the council and administration, what their job would be moving forward in relation to the plan. The real heavy lifting occurs when we're working through the planning process, but the committee still has some responsibilities moving forward, especially in the event that a development is proposed or an amendment is proposed where one or both of the municipalities need to have some additional discussions to address concerns that may be raised by one or other party in order to come to a resolution. And then how communication will occur and what the requirements are for circulation and referral. So one of the things that I wanted to note is that I had mentioned earlier that our original plan area was much larger. It essentially encompassed all of the lands that were a half mile around the boundary of the lake. Our new plan area just is the area that's a half mile around the summer village, essentially. However, the referral area that is identified within this IDP is still the area that is a half mile around the lake. And that was deliberate, and it's just to, again, encourage communication between the municipalities. Referring an application to an adjacent municipality does not give the municipality any additional right or influence over the approval process. It just enables communication and provides the municipalities with the ability to have a discussion before a decision is issued and get in front of a potential conflict or issue, which makes it a lot easier to resolve. It's a lot more difficult to make changes once a decision has been issued. Generally speaking, what happens is we have to go to the appeal process, right? And then, as I mentioned earlier, that slows everything down. And it sort of sets us up in a confrontational environment. If we can get in front of these things before those decisions have been issued, often we can resolve any problems before they ever become problems. All right, and the last little bits here pertain to the dispute resolution process. So all intermunicipal development plans must include a process for resolving disputes, and we've tried to include in this IDP a pretty detailed process with some timeline requirements for responding in the process. And you don't have to do that. You don't have to identify those timeline for response requirements, but we wanted to ensure that we weren't creating a situation that was, I guess, for lack of details that could have been included, too open-ended. Because we saw that as an opportunity to create delays in the process, and we didn't want to do that. So the reason that we've got such a specific dispute resolution process with a timeline for providing responses is in order to ensure that we are not slowing down the process. Every opportunity that we had to ensure that we're keeping things moving forward in a timely manner, we've tried to incorporate into this document. So the IDP itself wouldn't result in impediments to development occurring within either municipality. All right, that's an entire IDP in an hour. That's a high-level overview of an entire IDP in about an hour. And I'm really hoping that I've, I guess, enticed you to have a look at the document in more detail. One of the things that I always mention at the end of these types of presentations is how important it is for you when you're doing your review of the document to look very carefully at where we have used shall language and where we have used should language in the policies in the document. Where there is should language in the document, the municipalities' approving authorities have the ability to, I guess, using their discretion, adhere to the policy or not, so that they have some wiggle room, I guess, built into those policies. Where we've identified shall language, if it hasn't been softened with, shall encourage, those policies don't have flexibility in them. They must be adhered to by the municipalities' approving authorities. So I can give you an example of a scenario where this has maybe been problematic. I'm going to use a document that I didn't write because it's easier to pick on somebody else. So it was a municipal development plan that was recently approved, which is also a statutory plan in MDP, that included a policy that says that for the subdivision of a parcel of land that is larger than, I can't remember the area, say it's 20 acres in area, in order to facilitate the subdivision, the applicant must first prepare an area structure plan, or shall prepare an area structure plan. because of the shall language in that particular policy, even though what was being proposed was just a single parcel out of that 20 acres, and the balance of the 20 acres is essentially wetland, so it's not really developable, the area structure plan requirement is triggered, and then there isn't any flexibility around that. So you know your municipalities best, and you certainly know the lands within the plan area better than I do for Edmonton. I have an idea of the plan area and the environmental features from the work that we've done to try and provide some data to support the recommendations in the plan. But you as the people who are there know it better than we do. So I'd encourage you strongly to have a look at the policies and the language that we've used, the shall and the should language, the may and the will language, and make sure that it's appropriate within this plan and within this plan area. And let us know if it's not flexible enough, or if it's too flexible in some areas. Sometimes we've incorporated discretion into policies that people believe within the community shouldn't have that much discretion. So any and all of that feedback that you can provide us with will help us customize the plan to make sure that it's most appropriate for your municipalities, and will be very, very valuable to us in the planning process. So we're requesting that you have a look at the IDP and provide us with your thoughts. You can submit them to us by email if that's easiest for you. If you're not comfortable communicating that way, just let us know as well. And we can figure out another way to get your information conveyed to our committee and then along to councils for their consideration. And then we'd like to encourage you to share this information with your neighbors so that anyone who was unable to attend our session tonight has some more information about the plan and the project, and encourage them to read the IDP too. IDPs are not terribly long. They're not anywhere near as painful as a land use bylaw to review. So I mean, they're probably still, you know, if you're having trouble getting to sleep, this might be a good document still, but it won't give you a headache to read, I don't think. So it should be okay to get through. If you have any questions as you go through, please don't hesitate to get in touch with us. The gentleman who is normally our Westlock planner and contact, his name is Kyle Miller, and he couldn't be with us tonight, but I have given you his email address there. I think maybe, Brad, could you also share with our group your email address in the chat? And then you'll have those two to use to get in touch with us. And then if anybody needs the office number, if you're more comfortable communicating that way, just let Brad know, and he can provide you with that information too, and you can give us a call. So I think I indicated at the beginning that any information that we receive, all information that we receive from you tonight and after tonight, we will include in our What We Heard report, which will be shared back with all of you. If you would like to be if you would like us to email you when that information is available, let Brad have your email information too, and he can add you to a list to do that. We won't send you other information. Nick, I see your hand up, and in just a minute here, we'll get to questions. I've just got a little bit more here to say. Yeah, thank you, Brad, for adding your email. Oh, I can't remember what else I was going to say. Yes, and so we will compile all of that information, share it with our committee. We'll have another meeting with our committee to review that information and have them give us some direction about changes that they believe their councils would like to see made to the draft. Our committee members have been very helpful for us in I guess, vetting on behalf of their councils the documents and providing us with some guidance so that we know that when we send the documents along for consideration by the full councils, we should have addressed the majority of the issues. So we'll have one more kick at that to make sure we can try and get on top of those things so that when we move into the final stage of the project, which should be happening quite soon here, we've got documents that all of you are comfortable with or can live with. All right, so this is the part where I stop talking at you. The first thing I'm going to do is ask Brad if there's any questions that have been submitted as I was speaking. And then I would like to invite you to provide us with any questions that you may have in the chat. And if you want to show your faces again, you can, but I'll remind you we're still broadcasting live to YouTube. Yeah, yes, Brad.
I'm still just a bit rattled from the spelling mistakes here, so just let me compose myself. I've not received any questions or comments on my end. I'll give you a moment here to check yours to see if anyone has messaged you directly. We do have Nick with his hand raised. But other than that, I think some folks are probably just digesting the information. And again, anything received tonight or in the coming days will be included in the report. So if you prefer to hold off your questions until a future date, or just want to take that time to read the document yourself and then ask, that's totally fine as well.
When we do these engagement sessions, my intention is always to not put you on the spot. I assume that this may be the first time that you've had much information about the project or the document itself. So I think we didn't talk in advance of, I always forget to do this, of the session this evening about what our deadline should be for comments back. But generally, I think what we do is about 2 weeks after the engagement session. So I think that's what we'll do here too. So if you could, over the next couple of weeks, try to have a look at the document and then get in touch with us if after you've had a review, you have any questions, we would really appreciate that. And then we can start compiling that information and keep the process moving forward. You know, if you find that, you know, we're getting close to that 2-week deadline and you just need a little bit more time, just let us know too. I don't have council dates set yet, so I think we can be a little bit flexible with that. Maybe what we'll do, Brad, is we'll go to Nick with his hand up, and then if any of you do think of any questions while we're having a chat here with Nick, please feel free to enter them into the chat. Otherwise, hopefully we'll hear from you in the future. All right, Nick, we're coming. Brad?
Thank you, Jane. First of all, I want to say thank you for a very good presentation. It's a rapid fire presentation, and you're right, there's a lot of stuff to absorb. I think I raised my hand a bit prematurely because I was hoping to hear that this is a public consultation process and that people can now provide comments if they have comments. And that hadn't been provided when I raised my hand. So I'm glad that that part is included. And really, I just wish to encourage everyone that is somewhat familiar to engage in that discussion, because this is what it's for. And certainly, well, I'll stop there for now, because I think in talking to numerous people, I know there are concerns, and not just about the plan, but matters related to the plan, which may or may not fit into the plan. So I would just certainly encourage everyone to state your comments. This is the time to do it if you want to do it and get some immediate feedback. I'll stop there. Thank you, Jane. Presentation well done.
I'm muted. I was just noticing that Ken also has his hand up. Brad, could you ask Ken to unmute, please?
Hello? Hello?
Hi, Ken, you should be unmuted now.
Yes. Very well done presentation. I don't have any questions about the IDP, but I do have some comments. I live out in Larkspur full-time, and I've lived out here now for 8 years. And I love it dearly, but I do have a few comments. I can see why the county wants control over the development on the lake. If development goes ahead at the north end of the lake, there could be over 200 lots developed That's a heck of a lot of potential tax dollars paid to the county. With being a full-time resident these last 8 years, I have seen a huge influx of boats, all bigger and faster than the previous years. I actually resorted to refusing to even put my boat in the water on weekends because it is too dangerous. I've even gone so far as to sell my boat, dock, and lift, as have 4 other neighbors of mine, and none are planning on repurchasing boats. We all share this body of water, and what one area of the lake does affects the whole lake over a number of years. It took a person from Alberta, I took a person from Alberta Lake Management around the lake to sample the water, and wherever there is lake development, the potential pollution level and microorganisms are affected. This lake is way too small to have more development and watercraft on it. It is too dangerous, and there have been people injured and boats smashed on it. If we lose if we lose the lake water quality because of more development, we all lose. Our lake will be the same as Pigeon and Baptiste Lake, where property values have declined and you risk your health from going in the water. I really don't have any other questions or comments, but as a full-time resident, I am very concerned about any more development. This lake is really an accident waiting to happen on weekends. And that's basically all I have to say.
Thanks, Ken. I appreciate those comments. I've written them down to include within the record. Does anyone else have any additional comments or questions at this time? If not, I'll reiterate that this isn't your only opportunity. I know it is a lot of information. Brad, did you receive any questions in the chat?
I'm not on my end. I think we are probably just going to allow people to read and digest, and then get in touch with us in the future.
All right, that sounds good. Well, I would like to thank all of you again for taking the time tonight on this. What was a really bizarre day. I don't know where all of you are right now, but in Edmonton, it was just crazy. I had a very unhappy greyhound who doesn't like thunderstorms hiding under my desk for most of the day, but it's beautiful now here. So I guess I'll encourage you to enjoy the last bit of the evening, maybe with a copy of the intermunicipal development plan in your hand, in one hand and a drink in the other. And then get back to us with your comments. We'd be more than happy to have a discussion with you about the document. We will provide updates through your administration about the approval process moving forward. So when I have a better idea of what the timeline will be for our next committee meeting, and then moving the documents forward to the councils for council's consideration of first reading, we'll provide an update that I will ask both municipalities to host on their websites. So you guys can look back there for updates. And if you look to the websites and you can't find what you're looking for, again, please don't hesitate to contact our office and we'll get you any information that you need. Okay. With that, I think, Brad, we probably can end the YouTube presentation.